Hi everyone, it's Ray with Tarot Living. Thanks for joining. So today I'm actually going to let you know that I'm going to do 8 tarot lessons. So lessons 1 to 8 from now until December 2015. So it is September currently. So please watch for that in terms of postings. So today is actually tarot lesson number 1. And they're not going to be really long lessons. It's really just going to be taking a subject and actually teaching you about that particular subject. So I've been doing weekly tarot card readings, and I have found through the weekly tarot card readings that really I found that the purpose of why I was doing them was to help you understand how I read the tarot and how I card combine, basically. So if I pull 2 cards or 3 cards, I'm showing you how you could interpret and how you could combine the 2 meanings. So in those weekly readings, I realized that for me, the focus is teaching you about and experiencing pulling cards and how you combine those cards. None of those readings were cards that I set up beforehand. They were cards that I actually randomly pulled out of the deck, and then I read them cold right there. And so I was trying to teach about combining cards and how you can merge meanings and how you can see tension and release in a 2-card reading. So in doing the weekly tarot card readings, I recognized that my focus was really on teaching you how to read tarot. So I thought, well, instead of doing a weekly reading, what I'll do is actually a weekly lesson. So the idea is that I will do 8 lessons, like I said, from September until December, until Christmas 2015. And I think that hopefully everyone will enjoy that, and you'll look forward to having those weekly lessons come through. It may not be exactly every week, but somewhere between now and December, I hope to post 8 of them. So before we get started today, we're going to look at the first lesson today, but before we get started, maybe just do me a favor, and also just I want to recommend something for you. So in order to get an email notification immediately upon receiving or upon me posting a video, you actually have to do one thing in YouTube, and so I'm going to show you that right now of how you would do that. Hi everyone, just a reminder that once you've subscribed to my channel, on the right hand side where you see the subscribed, there's a little gear or circle. Click on that, and then click on send me all notifications for this channel, and click save, and that way you'll get immediate email notifications when I've posted a video. Thanks everyone. Great, thank you. So let's get started. So today your first lesson is going to be card combining and card patterns. So if you combine cards, there are patterns that actually come up within the cards fairly frequently. So tonight we're actually going to talk about some of the frequent patterns of card combinations that you do see and what that might mean. So for example, we're going to talk about cards that come up with similar meaning within a reading. We're going to talk about cards that come up in a similar suit, if you have a predominance of major arcana or minor arcana, and cards that come up with similar planetary attributions or combinations. So if you have 2 cards that are both ruled by certain planets, so for example, if they're both ruled by the moon or they're both ruled by Venus, that would be a card pattern or combination that I want to talk about. So that's going to be your lesson number 1 about card combination and card patterning. So here you go. All right, so our first lesson is about card combining and patterns. Patterns that cards make when they come up in a reading. So there's several ways that you can end up finding patterns in a reading. And I'm going to name a few today. I hope to get through them all. If not, we'll have to make part B of this video, but let's see how it goes. So the first one is really through similar meaning. And I love this pattern. It comes up in a reading a lot. Almost as though the message that's being given to the person is kind of, doubly strong. And as a reader, when you have 2 cards that come up in a reading that have a similar meaning, it's really quite poignant, and it's important to make sure that they, really understand the message that's being given to them. So here's an example, 7 of Pentacles and the Knight of Pentacles. I often get this, and so sometimes what happens when the person comes for a reading, I actually do astrology first, and then I do tarot. So during the tarot readings, there's usually, anywhere like 3 questions, 3 readings somewhere in the course of the, period of time that I'm doing the reading. And so oftentimes we'll get a 7 of Pentacles, let's say, it comes up in one reading, and then they may even have, not even in the same reading, but they might have that come up again, and then they might also have the Knight of Pentacles come up, for example. So it can come in various ways, but it's almost as though they're carrying that energy around with them. So 7 of Pentacles, let's just go through this a little bit because I want to show you how the similarity of meanings and card combining can be adjusted or changes depending on which card it's actually with. So 7 of Pentacles, it's actually Saturn in Taurus, and I've got a full video on 7 of Pentacles. You can go to that if you like, but 7 of Pentacles often means kind of attention to detail, diligence, patience. There's often delayed results or slow progress that's happening. And there's kind of, really you haven't yet been able to harvest whatever it is that you're working on. So you're working hard and you're putting in a lot of effort and you're having to be patient in order to reap the rewards. So I often find that card is paired with the Knight of Pentacles. And the Knight of Pentacles has, some similar connotations, but it's interesting because if you put the 7 of Pentacles with a different card, different things will be highlighted. So if it comes up with the Prince of Pentacles, in this case, the Prince is called the Knight. The Knight of Pentacles can often, relate to stability and loyalty and being very practical, pragmatic, and he also is seeking security, and he does things slowly, and he's not someone who rushes in. So he does things slowly, and he really thinks about what effort he's going to put in order to have the growth and the progress that will happen. But it's going to happen more slowly, and he's not going to rush in. So to me, if I have these 2 cards that come up, first of all, we have a pentacle theme, which, that's obvious, and we'll talk about that in a minute. But really, I'm talking about a similarity of meaning where we have a slowness, we have a practicality, a pragmatism, we have steady progress that happens over a period of time, and we don't necessarily reap rewards immediately, so we put effort in. So one is ruled by Taurus and the other by Virgo, earth signs, hardworking, sort of diligent. So that's the highlight that I would actually see if that those 2 cards come up. So I know that something that's happening for them is not reaching fulfillment or completion or fruition at this time, and that they have to be patient and that there is going to be steady progress that's happening. So if it's about something related to work, you'd have to put in work over a longer period of time and be very patient. If it's about a relationship, same situation, that it's a relationship you're perhaps working hard at, and it's probably a very practical relationship as well. Reliable, steady, not necessarily full of passion, but a lot of practicality. So that would be the message of card combining. So I'm actually going to take away the Prince of Pentacles, and I'm going to put in the Hanged Man. And the reason that I'm going to do that is show you that the highlight, when you have a similar meaning, is a little bit different. So if I put in the Hanged Man, now we're moving away from the pentacle theme a little bit, but we still have in the Hanged Man kind of letting go, surrender, pause, thinking, reflecting. It's not something that is happening at this moment. There's some inaction and standstill that happens with the Hanged Man. So again, we have something that is not coming to fruition right away. But in this case, I would say that less on the practicality, hard work, not that that's not there, but I think the main message here would be that there's really some type of delay or standstill or results that are not coming to fruition at this time. So I would probably highlight that a little bit more. So there's a couple of examples of where cards there's at least part of them that has similarity of meaning, and that message then becomes very strong in a reading. So that's that example. I'm going to go on to another one now. Okay, so our second example is what I consider to be the classic example that comes up really frequently in a lot of readings that I've done. They will either pull them together or somewhere in the course of the readings, a couple of these will come up. both of these will come up. So 8 of Swords and the Devil card. It's called something different in this deck, but really these two cards have a similar meaning. So if you have these two cards that come up in a reading, be sure that you really pay a lot of attention to what's happening here. So the 8 of Swords is, that card that we typically, think of as, self-bondage or self-limitation, where we are restricting ourselves and not moving out of the situation when indeed we could. So there could be a sense of kind of a lack of clarity or vision of where you really can go or how you can get there, and sort of trapping, self-entrapment. So really putting a wall around yourself in terms of feeling like those are the limitations that you actually have to, deal with. And the Devil card is often, I talk about the card being more like temptation or attachment to other things. This particular card can mean bondage as well. Really, it's that self-entrapment. We often look at a Rider-Waite card where the two people who are represented actually by the female and male lovers, they pull the lovers, which 5 and 1 for 15 makes 6. So the lovers are in the bondage, in the Devil card of the Rider-Waite, and they have chains around their neck, but the chains are loosely there. So we often talk about that entrapment and the chains, but that it's about your inner demons, and it's about your inner imprisonment and attaching yourself to things that are not necessarily of, healthy for you and good for you. So in this case, if these two cards come up, I would definitely focus on the part that they are binding themselves to a thought system or a belief system or situations or even people that are limiting them and not allowing you to be free. So there's a real kind of a attachment issue and a self-entrapment and self-limitation issue if those two cards came up. However, if we actually had, I'm going to take away the 8 of Swords, and if we had the 7 of Cups come up, now this 7 of Cups is quite a bit different than the Rider-Waite. So that's the 7 of Cups is the card that the person is sort of contemplating, and there's 7 cups in the air, and it's obviously a water card, and it's typically talking about dreaminess and imagination and visions. But the other side of that card is that there could be a lot of kind of skewed perspective, feeling like you've got delusions of not seeing things clearly, kind of a weakness of moving into things that are not necessarily in your best interest again. And it can represent often substance abuse if it's in a difficult situation. So with the Devil card also meaning that you can have attachment and addiction to things that are not obviously healthy for you. In this case, I would actually focus on potentially, is this person attaching themselves or depending on something that, whether it be a substance or even, a relationship, negative relationship, something like that, where they're attaching themselves to something that is not in their best interest, right? Is not healthy. So that's another example of how if you card combine, you can see that some parts of those cards have similarities, and it brings out an element of the cards that could be very important in terms of a message for the individual. So that's just a couple. We're going to have to move on to the next section. So I will go ahead and set up the cards for the next section. Okay, so the second part we're going to talk about for card combinations and patterns is by suit. So that one is obviously a little bit more straightforward. If you want a description of all of the suits in detail, go to my Learn How to Read Tarot Cards. It's either on the beginner or the intermediate video. So this one is, I've just shown you some cups. This is now the Hesychos Tarot by Mary Griffin. So I've shown you the cups. Now I've actually put these out for a specific reason. So the first one we have is the 2 of Cups, which is really, about obviously making connection with others and in particular with someone else, and having quite a bond. Cups are all about your emotional life, your inner world and emotional life, your feelings, your relationships with others, how you reconcile things, your really it's about your intuition as well, and how you feel on a soul level of really what you want out of life, your inner world. So those are cups. So we've got the Two of Cups here, so it really means that there's a connection with someone else. And then we've got Five of Cups. So if we have two cups or two or more cups that are pulled in a reading, we know that this individual is dealing with some kind of emotional part of themselves, dealing with a relationship situation. So in this case, it looks almost like it's a relationship situation. And with the Five of Cups there, I would probably interpret it as that there's potentially something that's been lost here, and the individual needs to kind of turn around and look at those two cups that are remaining and ensure that they're making sure that they're looking at the positive that is there as well. So it could be that a relationship had an issue and you need to look at the positive. It could be that relationship is actually over and you're having difficulty letting go and moving on, that sort of thing. But if we had pulled the Two of Cups with the Three of Cups, for example, we still have a cup theme, but just thought I'd point out that obviously, that would give a different feel to it. So it would really be talking about not only the relationship with another, but potentially relationship with more than one person. Sometimes they talk about, baby news with the Three of Cups. It really is about your relationship, your relatability to others, and Three of Cups is actually Mercury in Cancer, and so it talks about your communication with others. So this card to me would suggest that there is an emotional situation going on where there's positive communication and positive connection with other people, and it's more than one person even. So that's quite a positive placement if you had those two cards. So in any event, the point is that you're looking for a pattern of suits, obviously, and each suit means a different thing and is saying this person is focusing on a different area right now. So as I say, go to one of my other videos, Learn How to Read Tarot Cards, the Beginner or Intermediate, and you would be able to find a detailed description of each of the suits. Okay, and another area we're going to talk about is the patterns or similarities that can happen through numbers. So in this case, I've pulled one card out that is the Major Arcana, because don't forget that we can combine the numbers of the Major Arcana with any of the minors as well. So the Wheel of Fortune, or the wheel, is always the number 10 in the Major Arcana. And I've pulled another 10 cards, so this one is the 10 of Swords. So when we're looking at numbers, the intermediate video has a very detailed description of each of the numbers, but a number 10, for example, is going to mean that we're really at the end of the cycle. And we're not just nearing the end, we're actually at the end of a cycle. And we have gone through a lot, potentially worked very hard, and experienced a lot of things by the time we get to the 10. And it is the closing of that cycle. Sometimes in the masculine suits, which are the swords and the wands, we have some challenges that we've been through as we've walked through that suit. So when we get to the end, they tend to be quite, dramatic or more challenging cards. The cups and the pentacles, you will note, which are the feminine principles, are more calm and abundant. So as we reach the 10 of Swords, we've really been through a lot with the swords, and we have come to a point where something is at its final end, and we are at a point of, kind of ruination or a collapse of that particular situation. But the gift of the 10 of Swords, or the light of the 10 of Swords, is that in the Rider-Waite deck there's actually a pink, I believe it's a pink horizon or yellow horizon. And it's really saying that we are at the end of the cycle, but a new cycle is just about to begin. And so we have to take a look at where, how we can embrace that next phase and the next cycle that's coming right after, because we are at the end. And it's talking about phases a great deal when we look at the 10. that is particularly shown and demonstrated in the fact that it connects up with the Wheel of Fortune. And the Wheel of Fortune in the Major Arcana really speaks to cyclical nature of things and the phasal nature. So we go through a certain type of phase and we experience something and we move on to another phase. And it really talks about the flux and movement and change that happens in life and the seasons of life. So if I were to have pulled, if this or someone has pulled the Wheel of Fortune and they pulled any other 10 in the deck, then I know that they are at the end of a cycle. Each number brings its own gift and brings its own challenges, and you can listen to my description of all of the numbers. So that's another pattern that we see in readings is through the numbers that show up. And often you do find, if you're doing a reading with several cards, you will find that numbers will repeat themselves, whether they are between minors and minors or minor and major.